We'll now move to item 16C, which is discussion of the sale of the Western Golf Course. Mr. Arnell.
Thank you, Chairman, members of council. Mr. Brown, your deputy city manager, is here tonight. Traveled all day to get back. Once this was talked about yesterday and placed on the agenda, so he's here to discuss with you the proposals that we have for the sale of our Western Golf Course. It's your agenda item number 16C.
Thank you very much. Welcome, Mr. Brown.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and members of Council. George Brown, Deputy City Manager. City Clerk is handing out to you a summary document that I will go over with you briefly this evening, as well as copies of the PowerPoint slides that I'm going to present, which are a summary of what you're going to be seeing. Council will recall that back in November, you basically narrowed down the field of proposers to three: Compson, GL Homes, and Lennar. And I'm going to go over the facts of their three proposals this evening. Compson's proposal is different from the other two because it has contingencies that the other two do not contain. But we'll discuss those in detail as I go through the presentation. And by the way, once again, just for the record, this is the city's Western Golf Course, west of the Turnpike. It has nothing to do with the Red Reef Golf Course, nor are we discussing the Ocean Breeze Golf Course this evening. As I mentioned, there are three proposals that you asked to be remain in consideration: Compson, Boca Argent, GL Homes, and Lennar Homes. Again, the revised Lennar proposal that we have before us does not include any contingency with regard to the Ocean Breeze Golf Course and exchange or value. There are, of the three proposals, Compson's is $73.180180 million, with a minimum purchase price of $50 million. It has contingencies for county approvals prior to environmental cleanup, then a contingency for environmental cleanup of the site with the city paying the costs of the environmental cleanup. And in addition, not listed on the screen, it requires closure of the golf course in 3 9-hole sections in order for that environmental remediation to take place, which effectively would close the entire golf course during that period. GL Homes has no contingency with regard to county approvals. There is a contingency for a 90-day inspection period with a termination right at the end of that period. The same is true of Lennar's proposal. It is for $73 million minimum, and their contingency has a 90-day inspection period. Otherwise, no contingencies, no county approvals are required. GL and Lennar are basically apples to apples when it comes to pricing and contingency. Here's a further summary of the most important points in the contracts. Again, the prices are listed, the minimum prices are listed. Selection deposit, which is the deposit that we required of anyone who would enter into the contract in order for us to complete our due diligence during the contract period. In other words, finalizing the contract document and any of the other activities that would need to take place. Compson did not name such a deposit. GL named a deposit of $100,000, Lennar $35,000. The total deposits proposed would be $1 million from Compson, $4 million from GL, and $4,035,000 from Lennar. Inspection period for both GL and Lennar is 90 days. For Compson, there was no inspection period proposed. However, county approvals would be required prior to actual proceeding with the contract and environmental remediation. The date to close proposed by both GL and Lennar is 18 months, regardless of anything that they may be pursuing with Palm Beach County. It would occur sooner if they were to obtain approvals from the county sooner. Compson offered a period of 24 months. That was based upon the date of their proposal, 24 months from that date, the beginning of 2019. But again, that requires county approvals prior to remediation and closing. And it also allowed for 2 extensions. Again, GL has no contingency other than the inspection period. Lennar has no contingency other than the inspection period. And Compson has this closing contingent upon county approvals and the environmental cleanup, with the city paying the costs of the cleanup. Oops, excuse me. Again, the contract documents that we received are not actually in approvable form, and the city would have to do some due diligence and prior to actually having a contract that could be executed. Therefore, we requested a selection deposit. Compson did not offer one. GL offered $100,000 upon selection, and Lennar $35,000 upon selection. Council has some actions that you could take this evening, at least in terms of direction to staff. You could direct us to begin negotiations with a particular proposer. You could again postpone consideration, considering other factors that may be salient to what's going on. You could take no further action at this time, or you could take some other action as usual. That is the end of my presentation. I'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Members, any questions of Mr. Brown? Mr. Singer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Brown, can you talk a little bit about, we've all seen the purchase contracts, and I know that, as you just stated, they're not an approvable form, but can you compare, can you opine a little bit on how close each is to approvable form, or any bigger issues, or just a summary, I guess, of where they all stand?
I think in terms of laying out the basic terms, both GL and Lennar are fairly close in terms of being where they need to be in terms of the terms. I'm sorry about saying terms of terms. Where they are in terms of the actual terms of contract. Both GL and Lennar's deposit paragraphs need clarification, so we would know exactly what's happening when, what is refundable and non-refundable, and when. Those are some examples. The Compson contract is relatively unclear as to the sequence of events with regard to the cleanup and remediation. It's very problematic in terms of how the city would manage its golf course. It was something that would require a great deal of negotiation if we were to go in that direction.
And can you also talk about, these are the latest iterations of the contracts, can you talk about how just briefly summary, how any prior offers changed?
The Compson offer changed, as you will recall, when we had the meeting in November. Compson increased its price between the evening and the morning of the next day. That was an increase in price from 50 to 73. Don't quote me on the numbers, but there was an increase in price. GL's proposal has remained fairly consistent since the beginning. We have their contract proposal dated December 30th. As you'll recall, Lennar previously had a contingency in their contract that involved the sale of the exchange of the Ocean Breeze lands as part of the value of the purchase price. Their initial cash to us was $41 million. It's now 73, and there is no contingency with regard to Ocean Breeze at all.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Members, any further comments or questions of staff at this time? Nope.